When our speaker, Dave Rosenberg, was ordered to fly the first mission in support of Operation Desert Shield, he had less than 5 minutes' notice. 3 minutes later, he catapulted off the flight deck of the USS Independence with an unfamiliar wingman flying by his side. He followed procedures with a disciplined and systematic approach and successfully completed the mission. A decorated combat veteran, Dave Rosenberg applies the lessons learned on that day to a successful business career. An expert in leadership, Dave has led some of San Diego's most prominent small businesses in growth and success. He has been published in various national magazines and has worked with over 100 companies and organizations across the country, including the Department of Defense and the Department of the Navy. Today, he's going to share the secret of his systematic and disciplined approach to creating high-performance, self-directed teams that are inspired to accomplish your company's mission. Please help me welcome Dave Rosenberg.
On your feet. Rome, attend. On your feet. I'm talking to you. Don't sit there and look at me through that lens. On your feet. Everybody up, up, up. On your... No. Plan it. Do it again. Sit. Now, you will know I am addressing you when I call room. That will be followed by the command, attend. When I give that last syllable, you will come smartly to your feet. I roam, attend. Very well, as you were. Thank you. Thank you so much for playing along. What you just got was a small taste, and I mean an infinitesimally small taste, of what every single service member, whether they are the lowest enlisted personnel to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, whether they go through boot camp, service academy, reserve officer training, or officer candidate school, each and every member of our armed forces learns the same lesson that you just got a small taste of. And it's a lesson's a simple one. Before we can lead, we must first learn to follow. You are sitting here today ostensibly because you want to discover how to transform your teams into self-directed high performers, right? People who step up to the plate, rise to the occasion, and drive your company or organization to that next level. But before you can lead them, my question to you is, why did you not follow my simple directions? So I'll open this up to you guys. How come you didn't jump to your feet when I said on your feet? How come? You didn't know you were supposed to? You didn't trust me? You didn't know what applied to you? You didn't understand why I was asking you to do that. Believe it or not, these are the exact same reasons you have challenges having team members follow you. In fact, Forbes does a study every single year on why people leave their company. You know what never makes the list? Doesn't make the top 10? Any idea what that could be? Money. Yet people tell you, oh, I got a better job, it pays more. But that's never the case. You know what? Consistently in the top 5 reasons, and it's a variation, it's usually something like, I don't know how I'm contributing. I'm disconnected from the big picture. Or I don't trust my supervisors and my managers, etc. You see, for 300,000 years, human beings have wanted the same thing out of our leaders that we still want today. 300,000 years. Now that's a magic number. Do you know where I picked 300,000 years? I didn't just pick it out of my hat. That's how long Homo sapiens have been walking this planet. And since the dawn of man, we've wanted one thing and one thing only. And that's our leaders to ensure, or at least maximize, our chance of surviving. Right? That's it. We used to wander around in tribes of about 25 to 150 people, chasing food, hunting, gathering, and all we were concerned about was survival. So we picked leaders. And understand, we picked leaders. Leaders didn't pick us. We chose our leaders because they maximized that possibility. They were great hunters, they were smart thinkers, whatever it was, they increased the odds. Now, right now, you're probably thinking to yourself, yeah, that's not a big problem nowadays, is it? I mean, heck, I just go to the store and I get food, and if I lose my job, I go on unemployment, the government pays me. Yeah, but that's a new thing. Civilization has only been around for 12,000 of our 300,000 years. Think about that. That's 4%. 96% of the time since human beings have been around, we lived in a time of scarcity where we had to worry about survival. Now, even once civilization started, and that really only occurred when we started planting crops and domesticating animals, so we controlled our own food, we still had to worry about other humans taking our resources, weather, sickness, etc. It's only in the last 250 years in first world countries like ours, so still around the world, there are people who worry about survival every single day, that we've lived in a time of abundance where that's not a concern. So in our DNA, and this is really critical, in our DNA, baked into us, at the most basic level, is this overriding need to survive. So when your team members aren't listening to you, it's because they think their survival's at stake. Now that's what our team members want from us, but as leaders, what is it we want from our team? I was first confronted with this particular problem back in 1992 when I was assigned to be the legal officer at Fighter Squadron 211. Now I know, any service members here? Any prior service? Thank you for your service, by the way. So for a vast majority of you here, that doesn't mean anything. The legal officer is a non-lawyer. I didn't even get to play one on TV, folks. I was a non-lawyer who's responsible for administering the military justice in commands that don't have a lawyer. And so we would get reports across our desk when people were written up, and we had to make a determination on how to deal with that. And it could be anything from a courts-martial, which is actually a criminal trial, and that's a big deal. You hear a lot about courts-martial on TV. It's a big threshold before somebody does that. In the middle, the commanding officer has certain abilities to punish people. They could reduce them in rank. They could cut their pay in half for a period of time. They could confine them to quarters. And if we're at sea, in the Navy at least, believe it or not, you can still restrict somebody to bread and water for 3 days. How's that for punishment, huh? At the low end, of course, we're able to just have what we call a verbal reprimand. Well, I despise that term, but it's a conversation with somebody. And so it was my job to make a determination of which of these many things were done and either make a recommendation for the advanced ones or deal with it myself. One day I get a report across my desk. Petty Officer Gill, dereliction of duty. Gill. Oh, he's that new petty officer who just joined the squadron not too long ago. So I'm faced with this dilemma. What do I do with this? And I thought, I think I'm going to have a conversation with him. This verbal reprimand, it's called. I'm going to have this conversation with him. But, frankly, I was 31 years old. Tell me if you could relate to this. 31 years old. And although I had been in a service for a number of years at this point, and I had led men, when you're running a shop, you're not responsible, believe it or not, for the reprimands. That's what my new job was. So this was a kind of a first for me. And I was like, how do I have this conversation? Anybody faced with that dilemma? Like, how do I have that difficult conversation? Most of the people I deal with avoid it, right? They're just like, he's a good worker, otherwise this one thing, I'm going to let him get away with that, right? They avoid that conversation. I couldn't do that. I had to be accountable to my team. I had to be accountable to my boss. I had to be accountable to myself. Most importantly, I had to be accountable to the chief who was running this guy to make sure that he didn't become a bigger problem. Now, let me take a break here before I go on. I'm going to explain, we're going to talk about how to elevate people and how to get them excited about their job instead of depressed. And I see some people here taking notes. I think that's fantastic. But I want to tell you, you don't need to do that. So I actually have for you a little gift. It's my best guide to employee improvement. And you can just snap a picture of that QR code or go to bit.ly/best-ee-guide. And you'll sign up for my newsletter, but you get an instant download as soon as you get there, and you can download a PDF, and there's a video to walk you through that. And this way you can focus, and we don't have to worry about what's advice here, okay? So break over here. So now I have to have a conversation with this guy, and how am I going to do this? How am I going to motivate him? I mean, I wasn't the best worker growing up. I started working at 13. I wasn't always the best. I got my tail chewed out a few times, and here's what I knew about getting your tail chewed out. It didn't feel good. And I almost never, in fact, let me strike that. I never came out of one of those conversations thinking, I want to do great for this guy. He's going to be the best. Oh, my God. No. You come out of that, you're going like, man, that hurt. Ow. I want to avoid that. But I'm not motivated to do better. I'm just motivated to keep my butt above that butt-chewing line, right? That's all they does. So chewing somebody out, that doesn't work. Well, being an engineer and being a naval officer, there's two things. One thing I knew, both of those disciplines taught me, which is start with the end in mind. Understand what your end goal is. So I thought, what is it I want out of a team member? And I ask you, what is it you want out of your team members? And the best way to analyze anything like that is to look at the possibilities. So let's start at one end of the continuum. I want to take you back even farther back than 1992. I want to take you all the way back to 1974. That was a banner year. I see some of the faces in this audience weren't even born then. But I will tell you, if you missed it, it was an amazing year. You know what made it so amazing? I was 13 years old and I got my first job. Yeah, that was pretty amazing. You see, my dad was a school teacher, and my mom had the most important job there is. She raised my two brothers and me. And of course, what that meant is I grew up in a family with an abundance of love, but not a lot of money. I knew at 13, if I wanted anything for myself, I had to go to work. So I put on my sneakers. I had those really cool, I think they still have them today, Chuck Taylor All-Stars. They're still around. That's a great shoe. I put on my green Chuck Taylor All-Stars, and I started hitting the streets of Philadelphia near my house where I could walk to, and I found a Chinese restaurant that needed a busboy, and I was excited. I mean, this was going to be so cool. I was going to be a busboy. I had no idea what a busboy did, but I was going to be one. It was going to be fantastic. Show up for my first day of work. I got my black pants, my white shirt on. They show me where my badge of office is. That big gray bin. You know the one I'm talking about. They show me in the kitchen. I get to go to the magical place where the food comes out of the kitchen. They show me where the sink is so I can know how to put my dishes in. And there I am. I'm ready to go. I'm standing around waiting for them to open up the doors. Meanwhile, the waitresses are setting up dinner settings. And I'm just standing there waiting. All of a sudden, one of the waitresses walks up to me and she goes, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm waiting for you to open the doors so that customers could come in and you could take their orders and serve them food, and then they could dirty their dishes so I could clean them up." "No, help us set up those place settings." "Oh, okay. Nobody told me that." She showed me where the place settings were. She showed me how to set up the tables, and I went and helped out. And in no time flat, we have the dining room set, ready to go. I go back to my self-appointed place. Doors open up. Patrons start coming in. About 3 minutes later, that same waitress walks up to me. "What are you doing?" "Well, I know we have customers coming in, but they haven't even ordered yet, much less got food and make dirty dishes. So I'm waiting for them to have dirty dishes so I could clean their plates." She says, "No, you have to fill up their water glasses." "Oh, nobody told me." She shows me where to get the pitcher of water. I go around, I fill up the water glasses. Where do I end up? You got it. Back in my self-appointed place of waiting. All of a sudden, the waitress comes up to me and says, "Come on, what are you doing?" "That's right, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, they're not done eating yet." She says, "Don't wait for them to finish, clear their soup." You got the picture. I was what I now call a robot. You gave me instructions, I followed them really well, to the best of my ability, and as soon as those instructions were done, I went in that rest mode. Now, this is what it looked like for me, because at 13 and at no age did I ever smoke cigarettes, but a lot of times it looks like this, right? We've all seen that before. How many of you have robots working for you? Okay, I hope not. It's the worst kind of employee there is. Let's go to the other side of the spectrum. Every one of you sitting in this room right now probably fits this bill. You're here because you want to discover how to be better leaders. You're probably the first at the office, the last to leave. If it's not your company, you're still solving problems as if it was and taking them to the boss and saying, hey, I ran into this problem, here's the solution. And if you can't solve it, it's only because you don't have the authority, in which case you're going and saying, here's a problem, here's how I think we should fix it, can I do that? You're doing what you love to do. You're working from within. You are what we call self-actualized. You're doing what you're meant to do. And that is the key right there. See, I had seen sailors like this as well, our first-class petty officers or chiefs. These were guys who loved the Navy, loved what they did. They were hard chargers. That was the term we used, hard chargers. And why is it some people are robots and some people are hard chargers? And how do we move them from one to the other? And that is our mission as leaders. As leaders, we have two different strategies as business leaders. We have our business strategy, which is how do we improve our market share? How do we grow market share? On top of that, we have a leadership strategy. We marry those together. And our leadership strategy is how do we grow our people? Now, the answer to this is actually pretty simple. And I gave a little clue when I said self-actualized. That's a term that was first coined by a man by the name of Abraham Maslow. Maslow was a psychologist. He was a humanist, famed for his Maslow hierarchy of needs. Probably have heard of that. He was actually the founder of humanism, and humanist psychologists are ones who are interested in healthy human behavior as opposed to aberrant human behavior, like Freud or Jung. And what he was fascinated with specifically, why is it some people are doing what they're meant to do, what they're born to do, and most people are doing what they have to do? And he developed his hierarchy of needs. So I knew my goal. Pick up the phone. Hey, Chief, Lieutenant Rosenberg, can you have Petty Officer Gill come to my office at the end of shift? I want to have a conversation with him about the report you got me. Roger that, LT. All right, stage is set. I'm going to have that conversation, that challenging, difficult conversation. I know what my goal is. My goal is to turn him from a worker bee into somebody who loves what they do. Still not quite sure how to do this. Now, my dad, as I mentioned, was a school teacher. And as a school teacher, he worked in one of the worst neighborhoods of Philadelphia. You've seen the movie Rocky, right? Some of the young people may not know what I'm talking about. So Rocky took place in an area of Philadelphia called Kensington. Kensington is, at best, a blue-collar neighborhood. People there aspire to work in the trades. College isn't even on their horizon. They have, and this is true to this day, generational welfare. Education is the least most important thing they do. And my dad taught there for 39 years. He taught 3 generations, the grandchildren of his first students. And he had more than his fair share of success getting kids to step up and step out and move and improve their lives. As a young adult, as a teenager, and later on in college, having conversations with him, I would ask him, how do you do this? I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, you have to connect what people are doing with why it's important to them. It's not about you, it's about them. Focus on them. Now today, I know that everybody likes the same radio station. It's everyone's favorite radio station. Everyone in this room, you all listen to it too. It's your favorite station. Any idea what it is? It's WII-FM. I know you're thinking, I never tuned to that station, never even heard of it, but you have, because it stands for What's in It for Me. It's what we're all most concerned about. What's in it for me? How am I going to get something out of this? So, armed with this piece of information, I have a conversation with Petty Officer Gill. And for the record, by the way, I probably should point this out because there is a Petty Officer Gill. I don't actually remember this guy's name. You'll hear in a minute why I remember this story, but his name isn't Petty Officer Gill, to protect the innocent. All right? So I get a knock on the door. I would knock on my microphone, but this doesn't work real well, right? So it's a bang, 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 okay? Knock on the door. Come in. Petty Officer Gill reporting as ordered. Have a seat, Petty Officer Gill. Gill, what's going on? I got this report from the chief that says you were derelict in duty. Yeah, LT, I'll tell you, I joined the Navy and I was super excited. It was just absolutely amazing. I was going to learn a trade. I was going to see the world. I was going to serve my country. I thought this was going to be fantastic. And aside, folks, Petty Officer Gill had bought into our purpose. When the military hires, they don't just take in, despite popular belief, they don't just take anybody who fogs a mirror. I remember my recruiter saying to me, do you understand what you're going to be doing? I said, yeah, I'm going to be a warrior. What's your purpose? See, hiring somebody serves Maslow's first level on Maslow's hierarchy, which is our physiological needs, the need to food and water, etc. When we hire somebody in the modern world, we've met that need. That doesn't mean we just hire anybody. We want to hire people who have a chance to become self-actualized doing what we do, whatever that might be. You run a hardware store, you want somebody who's going to enjoy serving others, enjoy serving the community. I heard that panel earlier talking about giving back to the community, right? That's the heart and soul of retail. Heart and soul of small business in this country, but retail especially. Hardware even more so, right? Because everything you buy in a hardware store directly goes to help somebody's house or their business. Right? You're building communities. If somebody is not on board with that, I wouldn't be hiring them. Because frankly, even if you fill all these needs, they're going to go on to something else. And whereas I'd be happy for them if they moved on, you want them to stay. So find people who are going to get excited about what you do, your mission, your purpose, just like Petty Officer Gill. Back to our story. I got out of boot camp and I went to training to C school. That's what the Navy calls first level training, by the way, folks. I went to C school and I did really well. I was excited. I was going to be an electronic technician. And because I did so well, I got my pick of squadrons and I went to here because I wanted to work on the F-14. You know, it was so cool. It was in Top Gun. I love that aircraft. Then I show up here and the Command Master Chief put me in the 1st Lieutenant's Division. Now that sounds really cool, 1st Lieutenants, folks. That's what Navy talk for janitor. His job was to sweep the floors, mop the heads, the bathrooms, clean the toilets, you know, janitor stuff. Here we took this young man who is just chewing nails and spitting them out, excited to be an electronic technician on the F-14, and we made him a janitor. He was understandably disappointed. The training we gave him, that meets the 2nd level of Maslow's needs. Right? So Maslow's needs are physiological needs at the bottom. The next level of needs is safety and security. How many of you do formal training at your company? Formal, written, syllabus-based training, not follow me around, do what I do. Anybody? You're missing an opportunity. Some of you do, some hands raised. You're missing an opportunity. First of all, syllabus-based training means that you're not going to miss anything because you take your time to figure out what's the correct order somebody should learn something, what do they need to do now. If it's not syllabus-based, you have the chance of forgetting something important. And when it comes up that they need to know it, they never were trained on it. It also gives you the ability later on, when you have one of those difficult conversations like I'm about to have, to avoid the excuse of, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. You should have testing for that training, right? You should really formalize that. It also sets up reciprocity. See, going way back to when we were roaming together in small bands, humans developed a need, it's in our DNA, to reciprocate good deeds. Because if I hunted and you gave me spearheads, I gave you food so I could keep getting spearheads, right? It's a survival trait. So when somebody does us a favor, we actually think about it. Your friend, your closest friend in the world asks you to come over and do something, you do it without a thought in the world for you, and yet they feel the need to buy you lunch, buy you a beer, get you some pizza, right? It's ingrained in us to reciprocate. When you train somebody, you trigger that reciprocation need, and the way they reciprocate is by doing a better job. Training sets the basement standard for you, and it meets that safety security need because now people know how to do their job. You've set them up for success. So we did all that, and then we took him out and put him in the First Lieutenant's Division. The next level in Maslow's hierarchy is love and belonging, being part of a team. And this young man didn't feel part of the team anymore. He felt disconnected. When you're disconnected from the team, right, being part of a group actually creates better safety and security. Think about it. Fill in this sentence. There is blank in numbers. Somebody help me. Safety in numbers, exactly. Right? So being part of the team makes us safer, means we're better able to meet our needs. And he felt like he was ostracized. So now it's my job to make him feel part of the group. How am I going to do this? Connect him with what's important to him. I get it, Gil. I really do. If after going through all my training, they said you couldn't fly, you had to go drive a ship, I think I'd be pretty dejected as well. But let me ask you a question. Let's pretend for a second you were in this shop. You're working 18-hour days, as we all are right now, getting ready for deployment. It's the end of the day. You've worked really hard. You're tired. You know the only thing you have to look forward to is doing it again tomorrow. So you're going to walk back to the barracks, your head's going to hit the pillow, your eyes are going to be asleep before you know it, and you're going to wake up and it's going to be Groundhog Day all over again. And the last thing you do before you go to leave the squadron is to go to the head to wash up and perhaps splash some water in your face, and you walk in, the head is a mess. There's toilet paper on the ground. There's stains in the toilet. You go to splash water in your face, except for there's no paper towels, and you can't see your face in the mirror because of all the water spots anyway. How do you feel? You feel pretty crummy. You feel like somebody's not doing their job. You go back to your barracks dejected. You toss and turn all night because you're thinking, why did I even join this Navy? Nobody cares. Man, I was so proud, and this is just a joke. And the next day, you're still thinking about that as you're working on my aircraft, and you miss something, and you miss something important. And later on, the skipper and me, or maybe somebody else, takes the airplane up, and something goes wrong. It goes terribly wrong. How would you feel? Or let's contrast that, maybe the other direction. Instead, when you walk in that head at the end of the day, it sparkles, it shines, it gleams, it has that little ding, you know, like Mr. Clean himself watched it. And you think, you know what, I'm working hard, but so are the first lieutenants. Man, they got my back. You feel a little bit better about yourself. And tomorrow, you come in well-rested, tired, but knowing you're doing a job and you're part of a team that cares, and you don't miss anything, and nothing happens. You have the ability to affect the morale of each of your shipmates. Directly falls on your shoulders. Bloom where you're planted. A rose will bloom in a pile of manure. Why don't you be that rose? And there's one other thing. So far, I've connected him to the big picture. I've made him part of that team. Maslow's next level is esteem. Esteem is not self-esteem. Oh, how do I feel about me? Am I happy? No. You're my tribe. I want to make sure I stay part of that tribe. Otherwise, what do? You kick me off the island, right? I can't survive alone on my own. You need to hold me in esteem. You need to hold your people in esteem. Appreciate their good job. Let them know when they're doing well. When they know that their job is secure because you appreciate them, that's when it opens up to self-actualization. That's the last piece. I needed to connect the dots for Gil. Do you think the chiefs don't know that you hate being the first lieutenant? Nobody wants to be first lieutenants. Typically, only 2 people go into first lieutenant's division. Newbies like you are screw-ups. You're not a screw-up. You don't want to become a screw-up. Now, what do you think the chiefs are going to do when they take a look and they see that doing a job you hate, you're doing the best job you can, that you're paying attention to detail? Do you think they're going to go, oh, let's leave him there. We need cleaner squadron spaces? Or are they going to say, we want that guy in the shop because what we do in the shop requires immense attention to detail, where lives are at stake. Which one do you think they're going to choose? That's right, the shop. When you bloom where you're planted, you will never stay doing something you hate. And I sent him on his merry way. Now, as I said before, I probably wouldn't remember this at all, except for something that happened special about 8 months later. Before I share that with you, though, I want to open this up to any questions you might have before I bring this home. A couple things on that. First of all, if you have a specific problem about your business, your company, something you're dealing with, I definitely want to hear about it. This is probably not the venue. I'm just going to hang out by that pillar when we're done here. Come and see me. Bring me your business card. Write FU on the card. Follow up. I know how your mind thinks. Follow up. Why do people think that? There's always one. Always. FU on your card. And what I want to do is we'll schedule a time on a Zoom call where 30 minutes or more, whatever you need, Zoom or phone call, let's talk about what's going on, and I will give you the best advice. I've run 6 different companies over the last 25 years after getting out of the service. I'm not going to say I've seen everything, because frankly, there's always something new, but I've seen a lot. And so I'd love to help you whatever that challenge might be. I promise you will get solid advice out of that. You may be curious also about potentially working together. Same thing. Just see me over there, okay? So if you have any other questions, more general questions everybody could appreciate, does anybody have anything at all? None? Man, you make me feel lonely up here. I'm going to cry. I don't feel esteemed. I don't feel appreciated. No. All right, so let's bring this home. 8 months after this happens. 8 months. We're on our way back from deployment. It was a Southern Watch deployment. We had been in Iraq keeping this is before the second Gulf, this is after the first Gulf War, keeping the Iraqis from flying, right, enforcing the no-fly zone. Our last port of call, Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor is our first port of call on the way out. We pick up weapons there. We don't carry them from San Diego. Our last port of call on the way back, we dropped those same weapons off, hopefully the same weapons, right? As many as we picked up, we'd like to drop off. Otherwise, it was a really interesting deployment. And we pick up something very special. Tigers. Yeah, no, I don't mean the animal. Tigers are what the Navy refers to as friends and family. You actually get to go on the boat and with a sail back to San Diego from Pearl Harbor. And I had a very special tiger this year. I had a tiger. I didn't have a tiger my first deployment. I had a tiger this year. My dad. Now, I had been to work with my dad as a kid, on occasion, but now my dad was coming to work with me. And let's be honest, this was a freaking cool job, right? Even to this day, right? This is the coolest job I ever had. And you don't do a lot of flight operations on Tiger crews because there's bunch of civilians around, but you do some so they could taste it, and I already knew that they had tapped me to fly, so he was going to actually see me fly and land, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. So we pull into port, Pearl Harbor. We had been at sea for 2 weeks at this point. It takes about 2 weeks to steam from Hong Kong, which is our last port of call. And I was excited for a lot of reasons, not just because my dad was going to be there. First of all, it's our first U.S. port. I didn't have to convert money in my brain. 10,000 baht to the dollar is so, you find yourself arguing over like 50,000 baht and you realize that it's 50 cents. It's just absolutely nuts. I was meeting American women. I was single at the time, right? So I was single. I was meeting American women. Who knows? There's a chance, right? At this point, there's certainly no chance overseas of anything. So we pull into port. I ended up spending all night out. Drop my new friend off at her hotel, get in my rented Jeep, and I head to the airport. And I'm running late. They came into the charter terminal. I remember as I approached the charter terminal, I expected throngs of people, of all the sailors meeting their friends and family there, all the Tigers there. And as I approach, I see 3 people in the distance. Uh-oh. As I got closer, I recognized one is my dad. One's a young sailor I recognize from the squadron, and another older gentleman turns out to be his father. Pull up, throw the Jeep in park, get out, give my dad a big hug and a kiss. Hello, I hadn't seen him in probably a year at this point or more. Sailor introduces me to his father, grab my dad's bag, throw it in a Jeep. He gets in, I get in, we buckle up, we drive away. My dad turns and looks at me and goes, son, that guy has a lot of respect for you. He credits you with saving his career. Dad, I barely know the guy. I've seen him around the squadron, but he's never worked for me. Then my dad recounted to me the story I just told you from that sailor's perspective. That's the power of leadership. We have the ability to touch somebody's lives. That one comment changed my life. It set me on the mission I'm on today, which is a simple one. I want to replace Thank God It's Friday with Thank God It's Monday. I want to make sure that everybody who goes to work doing something they love. Because when they come home, that touches the people they live with, their friends, their families. Right? When you come home beat up, your days are miserable. But when you come home energized because you love what you do, how much richer is everybody else's day that you touch? I only could do that because I cared enough about the sailor to see that he did better. We only hold people accountable who we think are capable. So when you fail to hold people accountable, well, you're really telling them you're not capable. So my call to you is a simple one. Care about your team members. Care about them. Make sure they've got the right tools in place, that they don't want to just survive, which is what they need, but what we need as leaders is to have them thrive, be becoming self-actualized. Thank you.